In its second week, the Poly network is still trying to recover funds from that massive and epic $600 million heist conducted by some on-chain terrorist. Essentially, all the money that they're trying to get back from this hack, which was, of course, again, 2 weeks ago, is still locked in a multi-sig wallet that the hacker is refusing to hand over one or two of the keys to. So essentially, these funds are still at the discretion, not of the Poly Network team, but at the discretion of the hacker, and they haven't turned them over yet. The Poly Network team has issued a $500,000 bug bounty to the hacker if he returns all the funds. But now the hacker's kind of getting second feelings and thinking that, hey, if I get this $500,000 and I give this money back, what's stopping Poly Network from being hacked again, either by myself or another hacker who's looking at the code and seeing that there's still bugs in it. So interesting to see that this is still happening. This $600 million heist is not over, and there's still like on-chain discussions about how these funds are going to be returned. Of course, like none of this is happening over email or over a phone, like in a typical kind of situation where you're doing like some sort of hostage negotiation. This is all happening on Etherscan, which is just like wild to see. I think this is turning into something that could be a book one day about like Poly Network's saga trying to get its funds back. $600 million is definitely not something to blink at. Zach, I want to throw this to you and get some of your thoughts on this saga.
I still just want the Bruce Willis movie. I think it's still going to be a great Bruce Willis bank heist movie, and that's all I'm here for. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to see this play out so publicly. I think it's very in keeping with public networks, right? These are open books that people can peruse at will. So to see these conversations occurring as they are is very interesting and very, I think, in keeping with the blockchain space. So I don't know. I mean, we're just gonna have to wait and see when this comes to a conclusion. But for now, it's still up in the air. I think people saw this last week and they're like, "Oh, okay, the money went back. It's okay. Everything's good now." But clearly, there's still a lot of lingering questions as to this person's intentions, be they good or bad. We're just gonna have to watch and wait and see. Jen, I saw your hand. You take it and then toss it up to Naomi.
Yeah, this hacker seems unhinged. I mean, I don't read hacker messages often, but reading these messages that the hacker is sending the Poly network, it just seems like the person is unraveling. And I really feel like they're just upset that they weren't able to move these funds and actually do anything with this 600 million. I feel like they're a little hurt about that. And now I don't know what they're trying, but I can't wait to see the Hollywood film. Maybe it's going to be in Ocean's 14 when we finally find out what this hacker's actual motives are, but I'll toss it up to you, Naomi.
Yeah, it could be a mix of a whole bunch of different things going on here, because on the one hand, yeah, the message that they wrote, you know, they're talking about like all the what ifs and what's going to happen and their contingency plans and how they have the ability to continue this war and it's going to drag on, and they're going back and forth. But then at the other side of things, I mean, it wasn't until Tuesday that Poly Network said it had completed the second phase of its mainnet upgrade in response to the attack. So if there are still vulnerabilities there, why would the hacker send funds back in the control of you know, this system that clearly still has some flaws there? So I mean, the hacker did say that they, you know, will provide the final key when everyone is ready. Perhaps they are worried about this as well, that this is just kind of an ongoing vulnerability and it hasn't yet been patched to their liking. But yeah, there are some interesting things that they're throwing around there, especially when they refer to this imaginary bounty. So they say, if the Poly don't give the imaginary bounty as everyone expects, I have well enough budget to let the show go on. So it's almost like a threat in there. So we've got in there threats, we've got a concern about the future of the system. We've got, you know, kind of seemingly someone backed into a corner that's like, you know, this is going to be an endless war. Don't make me do it. But then there's like that, you know, I will provide the final key. Don't worry. You know, my idea's not changed. So super interesting. And as you said, Will, I completely agree. It's fascinating to watch this play out with messages written into the blockchain. Like, we are living in this sci-fi future, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, the mention of the show and the mention of, you know, entertainment value. It's just
right.
Yeah, it's pretty weird. It's pretty weird, Will.
It's super weird. I'm wondering why there hasn't been more like reaction in the markets from this. $600 million bust is a lot of money, and it kind of shows you to a degree to like what the fundamentals are of DeFi still are. And DeFi is kind of like this times around ICO bubble, right, where you have all these projects on chain, and they have a lot more strength than previous applications on the Ethereum network or other smart contract platforms. But something like the Poly network heist shows you like there's a lot of air in this market too that needs to be blown out. And I'm surprised that markets have just like, they just don't care. Like the price of Ether still keeps going up, and these tokens don't seem to care at all, which I'm kind of confused by, honestly.
Yeah, I think that comes down to the fact that big numbers are hard to wrap our heads around. And as human beings, we actually can't conceptualize numbers that high. We see that with the money printing going on at the Fed, that you just have these giant numbers and everyone just kind of gets numb to it. And I think that when you have these hacks as well, you throw around these big numbers and people just kind of become accustomed to it. It's the new normal. And so it's not actually surprising to me that the market isn't drilling in on this and isolating this number and contextualizing it and saying, oh, this is a really big deal. Generally people are living their own lives and not really focused on that stuff. But I wonder, like on that note, whether as we see bugs continue, I mean, if we as a community are not focused on this and doing research and making sure that we prevent ourselves and our friends from getting involved with things that could collapse, I wonder if we are going to see government pushback coming in and start to, go against developers of these projects, who are becoming increasingly anonymous because of this threat. Like, it's just interesting to see how that might play out. So I do hope that research does become a larger part of this ecosystem. And Zach, as you always say, this whole test and prod ethos, it leads to a lot of people getting burnt. And when people get burnt, they look for someone else to point the finger at and to pick up the pieces for them. So I hope that that's not the case here.
I mean, also just beyond the regulatory thing, I think we're going to get an announcement pretty soon from Aave about its institutional DeFi play, Aave Arc. And so to have this sort of going on in the background may make that sort of institutional narrative a bit harder to sell, getting big financial institutions to actually use these protocols, which I think we had been seeing some momentum toward that. Maybe a more difficult pitch when the prospect of a $600 million hack is right around the corner. So some of those discussions could get pretty interesting as well.